Disruptions?
Yeah.
We are a disruptor.
Yeah.
Well,
Welcome to the latest episode of Over a Pint. This week I'm down at the Toronto Real Estate Board offices in North York, and I'm excited. So we have John DiMichele, who's the CEO of the Toronto Real Estate Board. So for those who don't know you, maybe a little bit of background.
thanks, Andrew, and thanks for coming here, and thanks for inviting me on this. I think I feel fortunate to having the opportunity to participate in this, and I know we talked about it before. So a little bit about me. I come from the industry. I started in the early 90s as a salesperson, and then around midpoint of the 90s, I jumped into a role as a broker for Royal LePage at the time. So I spent just a little over 5 years as a broker, running my own shop, working for Royal LePage Real Estate Services Limited. And then while I was doing that, I was also a volunteer. I spent 2 terms on the Oakville, Milton and Real Estate Board, Board of Directors, and then did some work at the Hamilton Real Estate Board. I was on the several AREA committees. I was chair of the MTC for CREA.
Yeah.
So I'm in the space. Then here at TREB, also on the board of directors, an opportunity came up to be CIO, and I put my name forward and I became CIO, and I did that for 12 years. And for the last 6, I've been CEO.
Awesome. So this week we're going to drink Partake Brewing, which is a non-alcoholic IPA. So it's actually the second episode we've had it on, but it's actually, at least I liked it a lot.
Okay.
You couldn't tell it was a non-alcoholic.
Non-alcoholic because,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, I have to drive after this.
Okay.
North on the DVP.
And I have to work.
Yeah. Yeah, we often schedule them near the ends of days.
Right.
For that reason.
But this is interesting.
Well, cheers. Thanks for coming
Cheers.
on.
Thank you for having me. Not bad.
Yeah. For a non-alcoholic one, it's pretty
Not bad.
good. Gets the job done. So, I mean, you answered a bit how long you've been in the industry, so like early 90s. So what led you to go from first like sales rep to broker? Like what made you want to do that change?
I actually came into the space with that in mind. I, as much as I loved selling, the market was pretty tough, and I had a small family. My children were little, like just being born, and so I didn't want to spend that much time away. And I know what realtors go through. I know what it takes to be a realtor. Some people don't, but it's a tough job, and it takes a lot of your time. And I think I had one circumstance where I had to leave my own birthday party to go do, and there's 50 people in the room, and I had to say, well, I got to go do an offer, and so I decided that I really wanted to be a broker.
Yeah.
But I had those moments as a broker too. I remember one Easter Sunday, one of my realtors had 3 offers on his own listing.
Yeah.
And so I actually went and officiated on behalf of the seller, but I had to leave the Easter Sunday event. And as an Italian, you know what that's like. And so,
I do know.
But I did it because he was a minister.
Yeah.
So I actually had to, how could I say no, right?
Yeah, that point
so,
you're doing it.
But that's, the role of the realtor is very difficult, it's time consuming, and I had always the eye on being a broker.
So then from there you moved from a broker into like the CIO. What kind of led you to be like, okay, this is the right move for my career to kind of basically get out of that side of the industry and over to this side?
So, when I was on the board of directors in Oakville, I remember one of the guys who was chair of the PAC committee, he and I would debate regulatory issues and policy issues all the time. And he said, you got a pretty big mouth. Maybe you should be on the PAC committee. And he recruited me. Same sort of thing. I did a lot of technology research on my own, but it was part of my curriculum at school, and I really liked it. I saw the magic in it, and so I learned a lot about it, took a bunch of courses, but I thought that was the future. Technology was going to be the future anyway, so I wanted to get involved with it as soon as I possibly could. The opportunity came up, they bought in, and I became CIO.
So on the like technology side for TREB, like what does that process actually look like for when you guys, like, because I know you guys do RFPs, but like how long is generally a process for you guys? I mean, I know I was involved when you guys were looking at e-signatures because I was consulting for a company then. So like I remember that one was pretty long, but is that pretty standard? Like it's a long process for you guys to bring in the technology?
We're a big ship,
Yeah.
very hard to turn. And, well, we can turn it, just that it takes a while to get the ship turned. We're a grassroots up. We do research. It comes up through committees. Committees actually bring ideas to the table. Sometimes staff participate, sometimes staff bring ideas too, depending on the nature of the idea. But I'll give one example. One of the things I had to solve was the securities issue.
Yeah.
How do we prevent people from just hacking into or getting into the system? And that's when we went out and looked at several different solutions. But that took a long time because we went through a few focus groups. We put it in the hands of people. We made sure that was something that they wanted. They make the recommendation. I can't make a recommendation. The board does or a committee does, and it pulls up that chain. And then there's a financial side, so everything goes to finance too. But think about moving 58,000, over 60,000 users to a different platform of any sort. It's very difficult.
Yeah.
So, and at the end of the day, you have to solve a problem. And we're doing some of that now.
So I know like right now, because it was one of the questions that came in, is basically like where does the RFP stand for like the new MLS? Because I know like when I started selling, it was just when Stratus came in. And I realized at the time it wasn't a finished project, you could still use the old one. But even then, it still felt like a little, at least on the design side, outdated. The actual tech behind it seemed fine for what it was at the time. So what kind of made you guys go from one, maybe not, like, I don't know if Stratus is even in on the RFP, like the current system, or what? I guess it doesn't really matter. But like, what made you decide, one, we have to go make that, and then where does it actually stand in that process now?
So same sort of thing. We do our research and see what the satisfaction levels are with the service. And while there are some people that perhaps aren't, the majority and the vast majority are.
Yeah.
And I do one-on-ones with people just like you do.
Yeah.
And I ask them, tell me about your situation, and so does the committee. We do our research. We actually hire people to find out on a regular basis. But ultimately, I don't think there is one MLS system out there that is built on new technology, that the legacy folks. And what we're doing with RFP, and right now we've contracted or finalized who our consultant will be in just crafting the RFP itself. Some of the meetings that I've had have been exciting, to say the least. Then we're taking a new direction on how we're going through this process. It'll be transparent to the member, but it's more of a facilitation environment where you might have choice. Our goal is to have front end of choice. Yeah. Maybe not 10, maybe 4, maybe 3. It depends on how the members participate and what committees say. Yeah. You can't spread yourself too thin because you need help desk support and all these other things. But the idea of the RFP is to reimagine the way the MLS system will work behind the scenes. And we're partnering with other organizations to do this. So it's gained a lot of international attention. Some of the people that are inviting me to speak at their conferences in the United States is flattering. We've had some comments from people in Europe.
Where they don't even have an MLS.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
And funny you said that. We had one fellow say to me, we were complaining about how MLS should be, similar conversation. What should it be? What should it look like? And he said, "Boy, you have no idea. You guys are so lucky. Yeah. What we have doesn't even come close to comparing."
Yeah, when I worked at Remax, they brought in a bunch of Austrians into just to see how we do it here. And it's funny when you hear about people complaining about the system. And they don't even have cooperating brokers. They'll have 5 for sale signs on one property.
Right. Actually, those folks came and saw me twice.
Yeah.
The Austrian group.
A good group there.
Really good people. So, and they were really impressed with, and again, saying you're very lucky. But just to answer your question, we are moving down that road. We hope to be at least in parallel. And then we want to, if we choose another vendor or whatever the front ends are, it's what's happening behind the scenes. Yeah. We'll talk, I'm sure, a little bit. You're going to ask me about blockchain, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, I know, so with the RFP, in terms of timing, it's kind of hard, especially when it comes to tech. Do you guys have an anticipated, roughly speaking, this is when we want to have something out?
I personally would like to be parallel by the end of next year.
Yeah.
To have some of the new features that we're looking for members. We're building some of that in now. We're trying to get some of that stuff in there now. The concept of one dashboard, something that perhaps even a broker might want to white label, something that they can do and serve the brokerage as much as the realtor. And again, do all the work that you need to do in a better environment that you choose. But behind the scenes, we want to make sure that we are capturing and becoming more of a facilitation partner.
So I know I saw an interview that you were doing where you were talking about like some of the stuff you want, like you wanted to have like AI involved, blockchain involved. So I thought we'd talk about like some of those. Like, how do you envision blockchain being like an advantage to the MLS system?
So it's a future facing. Things like other companies that I've met with are building to this concept. So if a broker wants to have a move the agreement from contract to conveyance, you should be able to do that all digitally. And blockchain will facilitate that as long as you have and I don't want to get into too much detail on this, but if you have the original document that you know cannot immutable, that you cannot change. And right now when a realtor does a deal, they have to send the entire listing to the financial institution, right? Well, the financial institution should be able to grab the data they need and then just move it all through digitally and communicate with the realtor. So what we want is that once you are in the process, whoever plugs in, because it won't be us, will be able to say, okay, take this digitally through, a broker may want that, and they'll be able to facilitate it faster and communicate with the realtor.
So would you like hypothetically be looking at something that would actually like have an API integration type of thing with like an RVC, for example? Like they'd just be able to go right in and get what they need?
Whoever just like a data provider now or a website provider may want data or some kind of connectivity with TREB, we would facilitate that. So what we're hoping to do is make life easier, because it's pretty rough to do all those pieces. And I used to say to people, as a realtor, especially the ones that complain, I'd say, I got an empty desk right beside me anytime. Quit your job, come sit here. But I would say, you got to fill your car with gas. You got to make sure that it's clean. You got to do all the paperwork. And I know people have teams and administrators now, but I think we're looking at the bigger picture. What actually facilitates this? How can we be future facing with this? And maybe these things aren't going to be happening tomorrow, but we want to be prepared for it when it does. And there's a lot of activity right now coming out of Wall Street. A lot of money being shoved down into this space because they see the benefits too.
Yeah, I recently spoke at a conference that was like all prop tech, and it was interesting to watch that one because like there was one guy there who was, now I think he was a little too extreme, but he was convinced that blockchain would render agents irrelevant in the next 3 years. But it's like that's the thinking. It was interesting to watch that like at the people coming in, that's what they were thinking.
I just got back from a conference that was about innovation, and they had industry, the head of industry for both Google and Facebook, and they basically said the agent will always be relevant.
Yeah. That's my, because as an example, my aunt's a travel agent, still doing very well. Like, if you can't get rid of travel agents entirely, and they've been diminished a lot, it wouldn't surprise me if the number of agents eventually comes down. But even then, I'm not sure. I don't see it being affected nearly the same way that some other industries have.
Well, apparently, AREA just said that 47,500 people registered a couple months ago before the deadline. That's a lot of agents.
Yeah, that's going to be coming in. Now, I'm curious how many of them, because I don't know what the number is now, but I heard, and it's purely anecdotal, so I have no idea of the truth behind it, that it's something like 50% never actually get through to their license. I don't know how accurate that is anymore. But
that probably makes sense. Yeah. And I think there's a window. I remember when I was, again, managing and I had my office, 60% would make it to year 3, once they're even in the business.
Yeah. And do you guys keep stats of how many, I know they always talk about, it's pretty easy to track. This year we're at this number, this year we're at this many. Do you track how many you guys lose every year, or is it just what you're at? Yeah, from the board level. Say right now, just to make it even, you have 50,000. Next year at 52. Are you looking at do you track okay, we gained 3 and lost 1, or is it just we just look at net gain?
We look at net gain, but if we're doing an average of about anywhere between 350 and 450 that new that come on every month, and you only increase your membership by 2,000, it's an easy math.
Yeah.
Right? So you probably have anywhere between 2,000 to 3,000 attrition every year.
And do you guys know like why they're leaving? Like, do you guys put like resources into figuring out why people are leaving, or it's not really a focus for you guys?
So we do have a significant group of retirees. I know because I sign letters to them, and we write individual letters to people as well. But there are people that just we don't track that, and that's really a broker's job, and that's not our role.
Yeah. So like one like we talked about with like the new influx of agents for AREA, which now they have this big surplus that they're going out to people now. And like I know one of the things they've talked about, because we had Tim up to my conference to like ask for member feedback, and one that kept coming up was basically like a provincial MLS. Like with what you guys are working on, is that something that like you'd be looking at maybe AREA helps contribute towards, or are you even looking at what you're doing could be a provincial solution?
So it's bigger than, I think it's bigger than that, and I think that some of our partners believe it's bigger than that. But I think it's more along the lines of, at risk of sounding too big, we were informed by Oakville that our members had more listings in their area than their members did. And that's not uncommon. If you go to TREB Home, and you look at our GTA listings app and pull back and see how many listings our members have and how many listings these boards don't see because they don't interboard them. I'm going to be bold enough to say I think there's already a provincial MLS in the making here. And when you've got over 58,000 people using one system, I'm not sure you need to have another level of bureaucracy. Another level of data share. I mean, if all the boards just got together and did the right things, I think we would solve the problem very efficiently. But now you even look at, we're one system. We have partner boards, but there's no level of bureaucracy. You've got that other group has a level of bureaucracy over top of it that governs that, and now we will have another one. To me, I don't see that as being a solution. I see it as inefficient.
So what would you think would be like the efficient solution for that? Just one system?
One system. One system, if that's the goal. Our members are doing it anyway. It's happening organically. They're taking listings all over the province. And if you have a screen capture, have a look at this. I was unaware of it. Oakville brought it to our attention. And that's why we had the data swap with Oakville.
Now, how does it look like from like the standards committee of like, because like I know when I was selling, someone was asking me to list their mom's home in Thunder Bay. I'm like, I'm not going to Thunder Bay to do a deal. Like, does TREB even take positions on that of like, should you even be going up there if you're not a Thunder Bay agent? Because I know there's a lot of complaints of people being like, okay, there's this Toronto agent that's driving 5 hours to take a listing in Ottawa. Like, should they even be able to do that, or should it be like specific to a region?
RICO's Code of Ethics says you have to know the area that you're working in. You have to be able to service your client appropriately. But TREB doesn't take a position. There's a regulatory law. But if that person is proficient in that area, who are we to judge? And we know that people that have offices in Toronto that are working diligently all the time in other markets.
Are you guys involved in like the REBA reform that's coming out? Because I know like AREA talks a lot about like the stuff they're doing there, and like I know some brokers who have had talks, and I see a lot come out from RICO. But how much are you guys involved in that process? We're
involved. In fact, I sit on that REBA review task force, and also we have our own GR that does some input. And frankly, the ministry has contacted us a few times to meet with them, and we've met with them with AREA, and we always let AREA know, and they let us know, and we go ahead and have those meetings anyway.
So what changes would you like to see, whether, not necessarily from like a TREB perspective, just from like your experience in the industry, what changes would you like to see in the new REPO reform?
I think the one thing that mostly comes to mind for me is unlicensed people in the space.
Yeah.
I think that it's an unlevel playing field, notwithstanding homeowners and whatnot, but I think that you've got folks out there that hold themselves out as consultants
Yeah.
and effectively charge a significant amount of money without the same regulatory light
Yeah.
that shines on a realtor. I think it has to be fair that a realtor or a member, a TREB, a registrant or a licensee, however you want to qualify that individual, everybody in that space, the law should apply to everyone.
Yeah. So I know like one of the things that people talked about, and it's like, it was on the list of some, Tim talks about it a lot, I've talked about it a lot in groups, of people who are going to go against the rules, that they want more power to like revoke their license. Is that something you guys think's a good idea, or should be they kind of kept how it is now?
I agree. If someone is blatantly flaunting the laws, that person should not have the opportunity unless, it depends on the level of infraction, but let's face it, some of this lies with Repo or Repo. There are people who unfortunately are doing pretty bad things and still trading. I completely agree. I don't think that one size fits all in that case, but there should be a way to get these people out. It hurts everyone.
Is there any option at like the board level, whether it's TREB or another board, to like proactively take things, like not necessarily like maybe you have to wait for a RICO decision on what they did, but is there anything you guys can do on like a board level of basically revoking their access to the board? Because for the most part, that would just stop a lot of people from being able to do a lot of work.
But we do professional standards based on RMLS rules.
Yeah.
But, or if you do something else, that might be a little bit more egregious. But if RICO does the right things, then they can't be members, right? And I'm not saying they're doing a bad job. I think they're doing what they can. But I don't like the idea, going back to the same question or comment I made earlier, if you've got someone who's unlicensed, what do you do with them? How do you fix that?
Yeah, like who's the
What's the
body
remedy?
that goes?
Yeah. What's the remedy, especially if that individual unlicensed is acting as a consultant, a realtor's invited in, the light shines great, all of a sudden the responsibility is on the member,
Yeah.
right? And that's tough.
Cool.